Good evening and welcome to a special edition of Beyond the Front Page, a show put on here at Cayuga Community College and broadcast on Spectrum, Verizon Fios, and the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, as well as the college's radio station, Win 89. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. This week, Cayuga Reads program kicks off a month of programming focusing on the book, Bound for the Promised Land, a biography of Harriet Tubman, written by historian Dr. Kate Clifford Larson. The idea behind Cayuga Reads is to get the community talking about one single book and reading it, and they've been doing this on and off for about a decade. Past books have included The Life and Times of the Thunderbolt Kid with Bill Bryson, An American Tragedy by Theodore Dreiser, as well as The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell and Nickel and Dime by Barbara Earnhardt. This year, led by SEYMOUR Library, the program has been reactivated and kicks off tomorrow night, Wednesday, with Dr. Larson at the Auburn Public Theater, who joins us in the studio right now to talk about her 2003 book, Bound for the Promised Land. She is the author of several other books, The Assassin's Accomplice, about Mary Surratt and the plot to kill Lincoln, as well as her most recent book, Rosemary, which is about Rosemary Kennedy, and it's The Hidden Kennedy Daughter, which came out about a year and a half ago. So we're also delighted to not only have Lisa CARR from the library with us, but Jeffrey LUDWIG, who is joining us for the first time, who is the Director of Education for the Seward House. Welcome all. Glad to have you here. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I know you've done everything in this studio. You did many interviews years ago, and I've only been trying to get you back in here for 4 or 5 years. So it took this, and I'm glad. Thank you, Lisa, for picking the right book. So, so some basics before we get into the book itself. What is Cayuga Reads for those who don't know?
Cayuga Reads is it's a community read, and community reads were started by the director of the Center for the Book in Seattle 15 years ago, and the idea is just to have everybody in a community read the same book and be able to form connections. You know, I might see you reading a book at a bus stop and say, I'm reading that too. What page are you on? And just you can strike up conversations that you wouldn't normally be able to. So we had such great success early on with the other books we did. We took a break and it was time to reactivate it.
So I know Seward House is part of the initiative. What other community organizations are part of this?
This time we were partnering with the Harriet Tubman Boosters Club, and
you're speaking there. I know as we tape this today, you're speaking on the sculpture project tonight at Cayuga Museum.
Right. Okay. Right, and so we're hoping moving forward, Jeff and I have been speaking about it, we really want the Cayuga Reads Committee, 2018, will be starting next month. We want it to be very participatory. We really want community involvement. So if people have suggestions for community read, email me at seymourlibrary@seymourlib.org. Or call the library, stop by and visit me, and we'll take it to the committee.
Come and take out a book?
Yeah, take out a book, check out a movie, a cake pan.
Okay.
Right. Which we could talk about later.
So this existed several years ago. Kind of the Theodore Dreiser book, I think, kind of dropped off.
It dropped off. There was really very little participation.
But you'd also tried at one point to have a kid's book that was a companion. So Thunderbolt Kid was easy.
Right.
Because it was a fun book. Bill Bryson doesn't say a sentence that's not funny.
Right.
So you kind of dropped off and you've just restarted again. So how do you pick a book?
We're going to be setting those guidelines. The prior committee had somebody from the school district that was such a strong proponent of selecting a companion book. I really think it depends on the members of the committee. So I'm really looking for people to be part of the 2018 committee. I have commitment from Seward House, and somebody from the college library will be on that committee. And I've asked other librarians in Cayuga County to reach out in their community and suggest people that could be on the committee that would help us select the book. It really helps if it's in paperback, because just to get the number of copies out.
And so do you pick a companion children's book, or that's just not on the radar right now?
It's not on the radar right now.
I only asked that because heading into what you're talking about, there were a lot of children's books, and looking for your book in my attic last night, I found all the other books that I think I have that are up there. So because I think I collect those. If I see Harriet Tubman, but they're mainly children's books. So
that's right.
So before getting to you, one last question. Why did you pick this book?
It seems like there's such a renewed interest in Harriet Tubman, you know, in light of what's happening with the National Historic Park, the discussion about Harriet on the $20 bill. There was just a lot of excitement, but I was also hearing that locally, we kind of know the myth of Harriet Tubman. We really don't know her story. And it seemed like a really great time to have everybody read the biography, so we could all participate in what's happening in our community.
And this is available at the library, so while there's an event tomorrow night, this goes through the rest of the month and
right,
into November.
There's a number of different programs.
This way, it's audio book.
Digitally, if you want to
okay.
download it. Yep.
So I know the answer to this because I started rereading your book the other day, just so I could prep for this. And why did you write a book about Harriet Tubman?
I wrote a book about Harriet Tubman because she captivated me way, 25 years ago when I started my PhD program. My daughter was 7 years old and brought home a little biography of Harriet Tubman. Second graders start reading those things.
Like Minty or something.
Yeah, something. Yeah. And I just thought, oh, Harriet Tubman is just so cool. So I went to the library to find an adult biography. And the only thing available were 2 19th century biographies and one written by Earl Conrad, an Auburnian, in 1943. And that was it.
So literally between 1943 and 2003, nothing had been written.
Nothing.
So part of, and I think I've heard you talk about this before, was there a fall off prior to World War II? She was talked about a little bit more often, and then there seemed to be this drop off in the civil rights movement, and then the crescendo back up. So why is she back in the news like she is?
So actually, I don't think there was a leveling off. There was some fiction, some fictional stories that were written about her, and she became sort of an icon during the civil rights movement, but she was just lumped in with lots of other African-American historical characters. I think it was partly a maturity of African-American studies in universities that started, helping all of us start to look at African Americans as in more serious ways as part of this national past and active agents in creating this nation. And so in the 1990s, that maturity is reflected in many, many biographies that were starting to come out about African Americans and African American history. It was not maturing, but it was getting there. And I think that was the wave that I tapped into, and other historians did too.
So there's 2 other Earl Conrad books. There's one, SEWARD, and the trial, which he's well known for the insanity plea, and I think there's another one.
The Governor and His Lady.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, maybe there's a third one then about him running for president, the man who didn't become president. So he was a local guy, he put in the time, but you also went through a whole period of looking at a lot of different documents.
Right.
Those that had survived courthouse fires and just trying to piece it all together. And that hadn't been done?
That had not been done, and I'm not really sure why. But all the records have been there all this time, and courthouse records in Maryland, and then the archives in New England, where all the abolitionists, their families had deposited their voluminous papers because they wrote all the time. And so Harriet Tubman was living in those papers all these years, and no one had bothered to look.
How long did it take you to write it?
It was 10 years of research and writing.
So you have had 2 subsequent books, and we're going to come back to the Harriet Tubman book. Some people may know a little bit about this particular book, The Assassin's Accomplice, because there's a movie about Mary Surratt. It does not necessarily follow your book to the end, where you think she was guilty.
She was guilty.
She was, okay, she was guilty, but she was part of the cabal. And oddly enough, there's a tie-in to SEWARD here. So that was why, because there's this tie-in with SEWARD with these 2. Then you really depart, and you go to Rosemary Kennedy. But on Mary Surratt, just why did this book come about? Was it?
It was a little bit of a fluke. Every day I Google Harriet Tubman's name, And I'm constantly researching her life. And one day I Googled Harriet Tubman, and the Mary Surratt Museum in Clinton, Maryland popped up because they were hosting a bus tour to the eastern shore of Maryland, where Tubman was born and raised. And I thought, the Mary Surratt Museum, what is that? And I looked, and I read the story of Mary Surratt, and I thought, oh my goodness, that poor woman.
So there's a Mary Surratt, so that would be like having the Lee Harvey Oswald Museum?
Yeah, a little bit, but they do it very well. That's a great place to go. They analyze and interpret the assassination there. So I started researching, and I thought, I'm going to prove that Mary was innocent, that she really was railroaded and she was hanged inappropriately. The problem is that she was very guilty. It didn't take me long going through the research to realize.
It's in the first. I unfortunately write in my books, which I tried not to show my 5-year-old. But I was yes, yes, because he does borrow a lot from there. But I know I was making notes in here saying, okay, so this is what she's saying in all this. So you say you research Harriet Tubman every day.
I do.
Does that mean that you would update this volume?
I will update it at some point soon, hopefully when the $20 bill comes out, or a Tubman movie, it will be updated because there's a lot of new information.
So I was also going to say, it is interesting because there is not well, we know when she died, and if you go to the Cayuga County Courthouse, you know metal plates up on the front, and we know when it is in 1913. We don't know with a specific date of when she was born, so that would be, the 200th anniversary would be in 2022. How do you do a celebration? Obviously Lincoln, they've done that. We're doing the 100th anniversary this year of President Kennedy. How do you do a 200th anniversary of Harriet Tubman?
Oh, just like we would do it for Abraham Lincoln and any other great American hero.
It'd just be a more lengthy time.
And now we have the 2 national parks and a state park in Maryland and a byway, and I think we will have the $20 bill then, so I think it will be big.
So were you surprised when Steve Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury, questioned whether Harriet Tubman would go on the 20?
So when I heard him say that, it was on the news, I felt that he actually was sort of just covering because I felt he hadn't really thought about it. What I do know about the process is that the Federal Reserve, the Bureau of Engraving has already started work on the design, and it is a very long process. They are well into the process, and so if the present administration decides to rescind that, they would have to start all over again, and it would take several years of redesigning, even if they kept Jackson, because they have to put new security features in the bills.
But you're not surprised with the president that has Andrew Jackson in the Oval Office overlooking his desk.
I'm not
that
surprised.
He would say, let's stick with Jackson, not Tubman.
I'm not surprised, but of course, we're all moving forward in the 21st century, and I believe that Tubman is an exceptional American hero, and she will replace Andrew Jackson on the $20 bill.
So whether it's a woman, any woman, but you think it's going to be
I think it's going to be Harriet Tubman.
So so how I first met you was at Auburn High School when you were doing reviews for the National Park Service. So this goes back 15 years ago, maybe?
At least, 10 15. Yeah.
So what has your role been in this National Park Service? And I know we have the Dorchester County Center that opened up earlier this year. Obviously, we can get into, if we want to, the Auburn Center. What was your role with the National Park Service?
So I was brought on by the National Park Service back in probably 2001. They had started their special resource study to determine whether it was appropriate to create a park in honor of Harriet Tubman. And they were looking at Auburn and in Dorchester County, Maryland at the time, and they had heard that I was writing my dissertation on Tubman, so they brought me in as a consultant. And then I just sort of stayed on periodically to help with different projects. That special resource study went on for 8-9 years. It was really a long study, and they determined that it would be 2 parks, not just 1.
So we have Dorchester County that's up, and we were talking out in the hallway. They've got some other stuff that'll be finished hopefully in March of next year. Auburn is progressing. Why has it taken so long? But more importantly, why are these important?
I think it took so long because it's government, and the government takes a long time sometimes. I think it worked to everyone's advantage that it did take a long time because we secured 2 fabulous parks. If it had been decided back in 2005, it might have been just 1 park instead of 2. So I'm looking at it in a positive way. In Dorchester County, it's actually a state park that is the new visitor center. The national park is just a landscape. It has not been developed yet. And of course here in Auburn, the signing was in January, which creates the potential for the partnership for the National Park Service and the AME Zion Church. It's important now because the time has come for us to recognize and honor the diversity of our nation and the diversity of the people who built this country, and also to acknowledge that slavery is a scar on our national past. We have to learn about it, we have to become educated, and we have to do good by that history. We have to move forward and make the
sin.
Yeah, exactly, and make the world a much better place.
So from a historical perspective, forget the tourism for a second, because I know that's what a lot of local people talk about for obvious
reasons. Which is
reasons.
great, yeah.
But from a historical perspective, why is this important, not only for for this community, but also it runs off into the Seward House, make his job either hopefully easier, but also more busy, if that's a correct phrase. From a historical perspective, why are these centers important?
I think because I think Americans need to come and see the Seward House, see the Tubman home, learn the history, learn about the relationship between Harriet Tubman and William Henry Seward, and understand that these biracial relationships did move the world forward. They absolutely did. They were great men and great women of all social classes and status and color that worked together to improve the world against amazing odds. And we need that inspiration today, and we need to know that history. You know, this country didn't just, kind of grow up out of the heads of white men. It was everybody involved, women, people of color, Native peoples. We have to celebrate that tremendous diversity because we are, an amazing nation. But it isn't just because of the George Washingtons and Thomas Jeffersons of the world.
So from your perspective at the Seward House, how important is getting this up online for the Seward House? Because you had when Team of Rivals came out, there was obviously a big push where a lot of people came here, but there's this theory that if you have the Tubman Center open, there'll be another rush and people through your doors.
I think that's undeniable. I think when the center opens, we'll see a spike and a surge in numbers, and maybe one that will be lasting as Auburn becomes even more of a center for historical tourism. But from the Seward House as a sort of an institution that cares about its mission, which is educational and interpreting the 19th century through the lens of William Seward, his family, and his orbit, of which Harriet Tubman's a major part. I think it's exciting because there's such a special bond that links Tubman and Seward stories, as you've discussed. Most of our visitors are crossover visitors. They come to Auburn, they're drawn here for stories like the one you've just described. They realize there are these diversity of voices in history, and they want to be a part of that tapestry. They come to Auburn to visit Seward and Tubman together, and other places. They want to be all about history's hometown. But these two tours work so well in tandem because the stories are linked. You learn about reform, you learn about anti-slavery, you learn about the Underground Railroad, and you learn about the deep and abiding personal connections between William Seward, Francis Seward, Lizette Warden, and Harriet Tubman and her family too. So there's a human element here, and you walk away inspired by the big sweep of history and moved because you feel like you understand these people. You can relate to them, having been to their homes, hearing their stories, and seeing how they came together at an incredible moment in history.
And do you see joint programming existing in the future between, so that you do joint exhibits and things of that? Because exhibits, as we all know, it's expensive to bring in an exhibit anywhere, as our local museums find out. Is this something that this will help you do joint programming together?
I think so. I absolutely hope so. We partner with the Tubman site now. I mean, most school trips that come here from the region want to do them both. So we are constantly seeking out opportunities to collaborate with them. And I think as the institution grows, we'll only have more openings for that.
So anything to add on that?
No, I just think it's great. And when they develop the Tubman site along with the National Park Service, I think the numbers of tourists coming are going to be, you're going to be overwhelmed, because I know in Maryland, at the new visitor center there, they're seeing 3,000 to 4,000 people a week. They never expected that. They just were, they've been totally blindsided with the number, and that's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, really in the middle of nowhere.
I'm from there, it is.
Yeah, it is the middle of nowhere.
So, so what also helped Seward House was not only the book, but there was a movie, Lincoln, that, that came out. There has been talk about a Harriet Tubman movie, the great Viola Davis, the Oscar winner. She's most people know her right now because she's the star of How to Get Away with Murder. Do you have any dealings with, and it's odd because there's another Auburn connection that Viola Davis is agents from Auburn, but that aside, are you involved in that project at all, or do you know where they are on that?
So they optioned my book for the project. I worked with them on the script. They have a script writer, Kirk Ellis, who did the John Adams series.
For HBO. Yes,
for HBO. And DreamWorks is partnering with them. So it's just been an incredible process. It's on hold right now. I don't really know what's happening. I don't know if they'd tell me anyway. So I'm not sure.
So we're not looking to movie theaters next summer?
No, no, no. They haven't started filming yet.
Okay. Then you jumped, and I just want to get this in because I want to talk about all three of your books. Then you jumped to Rosemary Kennedy. So you left the 19th century behind and jumped right in the middle of one of the political dynasties. Why the book on Rosemary Kennedy?
She died in January of 2005, and I'm a Bostonian. I know about the Kennedy family, and I read her obituary in the paper, and it just hit me. It's such a tragic story, and I thought, you know, it's so unfair because so many people have written about the Kennedys, all of them, except for Rosemary. So I decided that I would try to investigate her life.
And for those who don't remember.
Oh, she was the disabled daughter of Joe and Rose Kennedy, the sister of President John Kennedy, and she was intellectually disabled. And the family struggled with her disabilities. She probably suffered from some type of mental illness as she aged into teenage years, and they struggled to work with her and teach her, and eventually her father forced her to have a lobotomy.
And one could say one of the positive offshoots was the creation of the Special Olympics
Absolutely.
in this country.
We're a better nation today because of what happened to Rosemary.
This is now in paperback as well. I
Yes.
know the Assassin's Accomplices. I gotta ask, what's next?
I am working on a biography of Margaret and Hans Ray, who collaborated and wrote the Curious George children's book series.
And what was the period of their lives?
They were born, 1900-ish, and they were German Jews living in Paris when the Nazis came through. He was just beginning his career as an illustrator for children's books, and they escaped the Nazis and came to the United States and wrote amazing books for children.
So this took 10 years. When am
Yeah.
I waiting for Curious George?
2 years.
2 years, okay. So we'd love to have it, and there's a Cayuga Reads
Yes.
book.
You can pair it with Curious
Right.
George.
So what is planned for tomorrow night?
Kate will be speaking about Bound for the Promised Land. I'm hoping that we'll be able to have a little bit of question and answer, and it's just open to the public. If you've read the book, that is really great. If you're in the middle of it, still come out and join us.
Is there a cost to attend?
No, it is at 7 p.m. at Auburn Public Theater, and it is free to attend.
And what do you plan on talking about tomorrow night? Because I know you're giving 4 different presentations. But let's talk about the last one and then work our way back.
I'll be talking a little bit about Tubman's history, the research that went into it, and also I'm going to add some of the new research that is not in the book that we have uncovered over the past 15 years. And some of it is right here in Auburn that has come to light since the book was published.
And I think you're doing 2 of my alma maters. You're going to the high school.
Yes.
And who are you talking to tomorrow?
The high school, I'm not sure.
Okay,
and,
so you're speaking there?
Yes, and then Genesee Elementary School on Thursday.
Oh, you're doing, okay.
Yes.
And what will you be talking to them about?
I think, well, at the elementary school, I think we'll be talking about Harriet Tubman, some of the myths about her life. Perhaps we'll do the same thing at the high school.
So on that note, I was going to ask you this a little bit ago. All the research you did, what was the biggest myth you found?
Oh, there were so many. Well, and of course this is the most controversial, that she did not make 19 trips and rescue 300 people, and she did not travel all throughout the South rescuing people. She went back for her family, the people that she loved desperately. And so she went back.
And her last trip was for a sister that
had
died.
Yes, and it devastated her, but she brought away another family, the Ennals family. And you know, she just was a remarkable human being, and it was this tremendous love that she had for her family that propelled her to go back and forth.
And you will be tonight, because this will be on at the same time you're speaking there, but you'll also be at Cayuga Museum, and you're promoting the statue effort.
Right, they're having a fundraiser for the statue.
Okay.
Right.
What else is planned for Cayuga Reads in the next couple of weeks?
All of the libraries in Cayuga County have been hosting book discussions. We had one last week. We will be having another one on November 1st. We do have representatives from the Tubman Historic Park that will be coming to talk on November 13th about what's happening with the National Historic Park. So we're really excited that we're going to bring them in. The Moravia Library is having a book discussion. There's a local book club. It's going to be on November 19th. It's at the Lock Fairgrounds. And if anybody wants more information,
They
they can
go to the Seymour Library's website.
Right, there's a Cayuga Reads.
I'm going to have them pop up, just segueing way out.
Okay.
On Friday, you just had a fun event. You were over at Holland Stadium. I think they're going to hopefully pop it up there. We obviously have a new stadium with a big A in the middle of it.
Yes.
And what did you do?
I'm going to turn it over here to Jeff because it was the Friends of the Library that had this great idea.
I'm not only here representing the Seward House, but
Okay.
Friends of Seymour Library. I'm the vice president of the Boosters.
Fun thing.
And we got the whole community, which loves its Seymour Library, to come to the stadium and to form the letters R-E-D and have read with an aerial shot.
So this is an aerial shot that hopefully people are seeing.
It was so fun.
It was. I ended up bringing, I think I started with 11 toddlers or
The E is a little shaky.
Well, no, the E is better than I thought it would be. We're in the middle of the E, that little fantail. But so that's going to be part of a calendar that you're going to sell?
Yes, the Seward House will be featured, Seymour Library, Albernians reading in their favorite places to read, iconic spots, and people doing what the Seymour Library wants to see them doing, which
And
is
when will
reading.
that go on sale?
That will be available for, let's see, we're going at the end of 2017. We're going to be shooting. It should be a 2019 calendar.
2019, okay. And what's coming up at Seward House in the near future as well?
So we're very excited. The three books I keep closest to my desk are this one, Doris Kearns Goodwin, and Walter Starr's biography of William Seward, which came out about 5 years ago. He's a great friend of the house, and he recently, as in this August, wrote and published a new book on Edward Stanton, another part of the illustrious team of rivals, Lincoln's Secretary of War. He's going to come to the Presbyterian Church, Westminster, on November 12th, which is a Sunday in the afternoon, to give a talk just for us, Seward and Stanton, friends, rivals, colleagues, discuss their relationship during the Lincoln and the Johnson years, do a double book talk, a double book signing. It is the book that we just sort of keep churning out of our bookstore. It's a very good biography, and I think it's going to be a great event for us and a chance to think about
Is
not
that
just
a fundraiser as well, where people buy tickets?
people who buy tickets. I believe it's maybe 15 or 20. If you go to our website, which is sewardhouse.org, you can get more information, and we hope to get a good turnout.
And any idea what the book is for next year?
We're open to suggestions.
But it is traditionally a nonfiction book.
It has traditionally been nonfiction, but we're kind of hoping to dip our toes into fiction. It just has been really challenging to all agree on the right fiction book, but I have hopes.
All right, your open invitation.
Thank you.
Was Curious George or whatever
Thank you.
to come back, but we do want to thank our guests. They have been Dr. Kate Clifford Larson, the author of Bound for the Promised Land, which is about Harriet Tubman, printed in 2003, and several other books. It's been a delight to have her in here, as well as a normal guest that we have on a regular basis, Lisa CARR from the Seymour Library, their librarian, as well as Jeff Ludwig, who is new to this show but has been here for about a year and a half at the Seward House, is their educator. We want to encourage you to look online to see what Cayuga Reads program is about and what events they will be doing over the next month. Again, we highly recommend Bound for the Promised Land. It's a terrific read. We will be back on Thursday with our 13th legislative forum, facing off incumbent Timothy C. Lattimore, who's seeking a third term against challenger Robert Nadzo. In fact, I think that is the Seward House. It covers the Seward House and Seymour Library's property. They will be here in the studio. Then we'll finish off on Halloween with the race for City Council. No connection whatsoever. We'll bring you all 4 candidates on the ballot, Debbie McCormick and Terry Cudley, as well as their challengers, John Camardo and Adam Miller. We'll return after Election Day. We're taking a break for about a week. We'll be back in with State Senator John DeFrancisco and talk about his possible run for governor. Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Parazola and Business Manager Lisa Green will be in to talk about foundation aid. We'll have an update from this college's president, Brian Durant, and we'll have shows on hospice, which turns 30, Hospice of the Finger Lakes, which turns 30 this year, as well as an update on the Shines Theater. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can contact us with your ideas for shows or guests. You can contact us at cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cayuga Community College. We hope you have a good evening and a great tomorrow, and we remind you, go out and read.